Right now, a jury must decide whether the mother who killed her baby in a microwave oven will live or die.
Arnold was convicted of killing her 28-day-old baby, Paris Talley, by burning her in a microwave back in 2005.
Hello everyone, and welcome. As an experienced crime analyst and storyteller, I share real-life cases with the goal of raising awareness, enhancing safety, and helping our community learn valuable lessons for prevention. Today, we'll be exploring Paris Talley's case and uncovering its latest developments. The baby was only 28 days old, barely old enough to smile. When the paramedics arrived, something was wrong, but it wasn't the weather. It was something much more serious. That morning, the house was eerily quiet. A silence that makes you stop and listen because you sense something is wrong, but you don't know what it is. The mother lay motionless on the sofa, unresponsive. The baby lay nearby, but he wasn't crying. He wasn't moving. And when they examined him, it was clear that something was very wrong. The medical professionals quickly realized this was no ordinary emergency. The cause was neither natural nor accidental. What they discovered would go down as one of the most unusual and disturbing cases Dayton had ever seen. It was intentional. The signs, the conditions, and something even the seasoned nurse in the admissions department couldn't miss. A faint, unpleasant odor lingering on the child's clothes. Detectives later said they had never encountered a case so calculated and personal, not just because of how it happened, but because of who was responsible and why. This is a story of betrayal in its rawest form. A young mother, a fight over loyalty, and a decision that would have shocked even the most seasoned jury. But what if I told you she almost got away with it? Before we go any further, this case involves sensitive details that may make some viewers uncomfortable. We've been careful to share this story with respect and responsibility, avoiding unnecessary details. To our first-time viewers, thank you for being here. Let us know where and when you watch this in the comments. It really helps us connect with this growing community. And to our amazing subscribers, your support means more than you think. Every like, every comment, every share helps us shine a light on these often overlooked stories. You've helped grow a movement, not just a channel.
Some call China Arnold the microwave mom, but Michelle Wilkinson calls her something else.
That's my sister. She means so much to me. That's my sister. That's the family. I was at work. She called me. And said something.
Now let's take a look at the case of Paris Talley, the baby who never had a chance, and the trial that almost abandoned her. In the last days of August 2005, the pressure inside the house on Lauren Avenue was mounting. China Arnold and Paris Talley were in an increasingly volatile relationship. The arguments were frequent, the accusations came easily, and one topic seemed to come up more than any other: paternity. According to later testimony, Paris began to doubt whether Paris was really his biological daughter. He cited rumors, gossip from neighbors, and gossip from mutual acquaintances. He believed China had been involved with someone else during her time at Sinclair Community College. China in turn rejected those claims. She countered with accusations of her own, alleging that Paris was the one who had been unfaithful. Specifically, she pointed to a woman who lived just a few doors down. Both denied wrongdoing, but neither fully trusted the other. The friction between them was not isolated, it was constant. On August 29, 2005, they made a decision to leave their children in the care of Paris's sister, Leonda. They told her they needed a break, a few hours to themselves. They went to a nearby park and brought along a bottle of high-proof alcohol, reportedly Bacardi 151. What began as casual conversation turned tense. The tone shifted quickly. The conversation that started in quiet turned into another argument, one that followed them home. They returned around 1:00 p.m. According to Leonda, the children were safe and resting. She specifically remembered checking on Paris around midnight. Nothing appeared unusual. The infant was sleeping, and Leonda noticed no signs of anything out of the ordinary. But in the hours that followed, the evening took a different turn. At approximately 4:00 a.m., a neighbor reported seeing China outside the apartment. She was alone, standing on the porch, silent. The street was quiet. No words were spoken. She appeared distracted, lost in thought, or perhaps trying to process something privately. Terrell arrived home minutes later. In his later testimony, he said he found China on the living room couch. He said she appeared to be sleeping. Near her, he saw Paris in her car seat. He believed she was asleep too. There was no sound, no crying, no sign of distress, and the hours between midnight and morning would become the foundation of the investigation that followed.
What you have is you have a defendant with no mental problems, no psychological problems, and you have a defendant with no excuses.
I'm not asking you to forgive her. That's not the purpose of this. It's the purpose of what we do. What we do. Meaning you all.
Investigators would later examine every decision, every movement, and every contradiction made during that window. When Paris was brought to Dayton Children's Medical Center in the early hours of the morning, medical staff immediately recognized that her condition was critical. The infant showed no signs of life, and her physical state raised urgent concern. From the moment she arrived, the focus shifted from routine care to something more serious. Dr. William Metre was one of the first physicians to evaluate her. His attention wasn't just on the child, it was also on the behavior of the adult who brought her in. According to Metre's later testimony, China Arnold did not appear visibly distressed. She reportedly asked, "My baby's is burned?" A question that struck the medical staff as unusual under the circumstances. When emergency staff encounter unexplained events involving an infant, standard protocol requires that law enforcement be contacted immediately. The team followed those procedures. Officers from the Dayton Police Department arrived on scene and began collecting preliminary information from the staff and those present. According to medical personnel and investigators, China's responses during these initial interactions were calm, but notably limited in emotional range. She provided no clear insight into what may have caused the emergency and offered no explanations that matched what professionals were observing. When detectives sat down with her later that same day, China said that she had placed Paris in a car seat near the couch before falling asleep. She explained that she had been drinking alcohol the night before and had passed out, unaware of anything unusual. She said that when she woke up, the child was not moving and that she had no knowledge of what had occurred during the night. She denied doing anything that could have caused harm and made no admissions of responsibility. Her account was vague, but consistent in one key point. She maintained that she simply didn't know what had happened. Police brought her in for questioning later that day. They took statements, verified timelines, and compared her version of events against what they had learned from hospital staff. But without physical evidence or eyewitness accounts, they lacked the legal grounds to hold her further. By that afternoon, China Arnold was released. At that time, there were no lab results, no conclusive forensic findings, no surveillance footage, or digital records linking anyone to an act of wrongdoing. Law enforcement couldn't move forward based on suspicion alone. The case was still in its earliest stage, but even as she walked out of the building, investigators had already begun the quiet process of gathering everything they needed. They reviewed medical files, requested internal reports from the emergency team, and started mapping out who was in the apartment that night and what each of them may have seen or heard. This first round of interviews and observations would later become the framework for the deeper investigation to come. And through these interviews, investigators would later determine that Paris likely passed away sometime between 1:30 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. that morning, though the exact time could not be pinpointed. Though little was said publicly about this in those early hours, but behind the scenes, the foundation of the case was already taking shape. The confirmation that Paris passed away from internal heat injuries narrowed the investigation significantly and shaped the direction detectives would take from that point forward. There was no video footage, no eyewitnesses, and no clear forensic evidence tying anyone to Paris Talley's passing. Investigators were left with inconsistent statements and unanswered questions, but they sensed something didn't add up. The real breakthrough came in May 2006. Nearly 9 months after Paris's death, investigators returned to the apartment for a fresh look, re-examining every object in the home. A seemingly ordinary appliance, the microwave, drew their focus. Forensic team swabbed its interior and sent the samples for advanced DNA testing. Weeks later, the results came back. Partial traces of Paris's DNA were found on the inner ceiling of the microwave. Investigators later concluded that Paris had been subjected to extreme heat inside the microwave, and the exposure proved fatal. This was found to have happened shortly after an argument between China Arnold and her boyfriend Paris Talley over whether he was Paris's biological father. Prosecutors stated it was a sudden act of anger, one that would shape the direction of the entire case. This evidence, while not conclusive on its own, opened a critical new path. Detectives sought the expertise of Dr. Marcela Fierro, a renowned forensic pathologist experienced in heat-related cases. She confirmed that the findings were consistent with internal heating injuries seen in similar incidents. To strengthen their case, investigators commissioned a controlled laboratory test using animal tissue. The results mirrored the injuries observed in Paris's case, supporting the theory that the microwave had been used deliberately. With each piece of evidence, the DNA traces, the forensic analysis, and the experimental results, the case moved from speculation to confirmation. What had begun as a medical mystery now pointed to an intentional act. For detectives, the puzzle was finally coming together, and the weight of accountability was clear. This was no longer about what might have happened. It was about what the evidence was quietly, methodically, and relentlessly proving. On November 27, 2006, more than a year after the investigation began, China Arnold was formally taken into custody. At that point, forensic results had come in, timelines had shifted, and investigators believed they had the framework to move forward. She was booked into Montgomery County Jail, where she would remain while awaiting trial. It was inside that facility, behind concrete walls and routine schedules, that a different kind of information surfaced. It didn't come from a detective or a forensic lab. It came from someone who was simply watching and listening from the next bunk over. Linda Williams was assigned to the same housing unit as China Arnold. Over the course of several months between late 2006 and early 2008, the two women spent countless hours in the same confined space. According to Williams, they formed a special rapport. It started as casual conversation, but as time passed, the subject changed. Williams later testified that during one of their many private discussions, China spoke about the night that led to her arrest. She allegedly described a fight with her boyfriend Paris Talley. According to Williams, China said she felt betrayed, overwhelmed, and that she reacted out of anger after consuming alcohol. What followed, she claimed, was a decision that spiraled beyond anything she could have imagined. The statement wasn't part of an official interview, it wasn't prompted by investigators. It came in a setting where there were no microphones, no transcripts, and no attorneys, just two individuals passing time. Williams described it not as a confession in the traditional sense, but as an admission, quiet, personal, and laced with regret. The confession remained private until just before Arnold's first trial in February 2008. That's when Linda Williams was called to testify. She provided her statement under oath, and it was added to the prosecution's case file. What made this testimony significant was not only its content, but its context. Williams had no prior connection to the case. She wasn't offered a plea deal. She wasn't granted early release. Prosecutors stated clearly that she came forward of her own volition with no promise of benefit. China Arnold, through her legal team, denied the conversation ever took place. She maintained that no such remarks were made and that the account was either a misunderstanding or a fabrication. Her attorneys questioned the reliability of inmate testimony, a known gray area in criminal proceedings. Any mother who sit there and put their baby in the microwave for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and just sit there, This case has unanswered questions. It might have unanswered questions because they charged the wrong person. And my argument to you isn't that China Arnold's not guilty because they can't prove it. My argument to you is China Arnold's not guilty because she's innocent. Innocent. Up China. Arnold is innocent of these charges. Even so, for investigators and prosecutors, Linda Williams became a vital part of the case. Her version of events supported a theory of emotional escalation. It introduced motive and clarified behavior that until then had remained ambiguous. It also reinforced elements of the timeline that law enforcement had been constructing for months. By early 2008, the case against China Arnold had moved from private investigation to public judgment. After years of mounting evidence, quiet interviews, and forensic evaluations, the prosecution brought its argument to court. But what unfolded next showed that even in a courtroom, certainty can still unravel. The first trial opened in February 2008. Prosecutors presented their evidence with confidence. They leaned on DNA analysis, expert interpretation, and statements collected over the course of more than a year. But just as the case was beginning to take shape, a new voice entered the scene. A 5-year-old relative of the family. This child, introduced through the defense, claimed that it wasn't China who had caused harm to Paris, but rather a neighborhood boy. The statement was vague. There were no specific details and no context that explained how such a thing could have happened, but it was enough to raise doubt. The judge declared a mistrial. The jury was dismissed. The courtroom emptied without resolution. Later that same year, prosecutors initiated a second trial. This time they focused more sharply. The goal was clarity, stripping away ambiguity and grounding the case in verified evidence. The forensic timeline, physical findings, and China's own statements became the pillars of the prosecution's case. The defense argued that China had been drinking heavily that night and that her actions were not the result of a calculated decision, but of impaired judgment. They said the emotional state she was in, combined with alcohol, made her incapable of deliberate intent. Despite these claims, the jury returned a clear verdict: guilty. The court sentenced her to life in prison with no possibility of parole, but the story didn't end there. In 2010, an appeals court reviewed the second trial and determined that a critical error had occurred. The defense had attempted to introduce a key witness, someone who might have influenced the jury's view of the timeline, but that testimony had been blocked. The conviction was overturned and a third trial was ordered. In May 2011, that final trial began. This time, the full list of witnesses was allowed. The case once again returned to familiar ground. Scientific evidence, timelines, emotional escalation, but the courtroom felt different. The stakes had shifted. The outcome now carried the weight of multiple years of litigation and 2 prior verdicts. Once again, China. Arnold was found guilty of aggravated murder. The prosecution had initially sought the maximum sentence, but the jury declined that request. Instead, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole for a second time. Dayton mother accused of killing her baby in a microwave oven could still face the death penalty. Good evening, I'm Mark Allen. I'm Michelle Kingsfield. That ruling came down just hours ago and means China Arnold may pay with her life if she's convicted. So new is in court and is live with breaking reaction from Arnold's family. So well, Mark, Michelle, China Arnold's family is still celebrating the fact that her last conviction was thrown out by an appeals court, and they're hoping that this time around it will be the same. Now China Arnold appeared before the judge in a long black skirt and white turtleneck this afternoon. She smiled at her family and was soft-spoken, but appeared to be in good spirits. She told Judge Mary Wiseman that she was happy with her defense attorneys. The issue pending before the judge today was whether prosecutors could ask for the death penalty in the third trial against China Arnold. And the judge said, after reviewing all the arguments and studying previous U.S. Supreme Court decisions, that the death penalty would apply. We spoke to Arnold's mother right after the hearing. Here's what she had to say. We're still hopeful. We are waiting to find out what's going to happen, and we'll see come April 25th. How's China holding up? She's pretty good. Her spirits are good. We're very happy. We keep her happy. So now, China Arnold's third trial for the murder of baby Paris Talley will start on April 25th. There will be 1 week of jury selection, and we're told the trial is expected to last for 1 week. Reporting live downtown, Sonu Rasu, 2 News on your side. In 2014, Arnold's legal team filed one last appeal, this time to the Ohio Supreme Court. They requested a full review, arguing that procedural issues had tainted the process. The court declined to hear the case. All legal paths had been exhausted. 3 trials, 2 convictions, 1 sentence that would never be lifted. What set this case apart wasn't just what happened behind closed doors, but what never happened outside them. No alerts were filed with protective services. No welfare checks. Not a single hotline call from family, neighbors, or professionals. Despite multiple children in the home, a criminal history, prior justice system contact, and an unstable relationship, no agency intervened. In Ohio, as in many states, child welfare services require a formal referral to act. Without a report, even clear risk factors may go unchecked. Paris Talley was not enrolled in support programs. No pediatrician flagged concerns, and no mandated reporter raised alarms. Perhaps most troubling, after the case concluded, nothing changed. No new laws, no reforms, no added guidelines. That silence after the fact became as devastating as the silence before it. Today, this case is studied as a lesson in the difference between visible harm and hidden risk, reminding us that the most urgent failures are often about what no one did when they could have acted. If this has opened your eyes to how quiet some failures can be, take a moment now to subscribe. These aren't just stories, they're blueprints for reform. And the more people who understand them, the fewer children who go unseen. If there's one undeniable lesson in this case, it's this. Danger doesn't always wear a warning label. Risk in many households isn't obvious. It hides in routine, in silence, in the belief that everything looks fine from the outside. That's why cases like this must be studied, not just remembered. Prevention isn't a one-time checklist. It's an ongoing commitment. The most effective safety nets start at the ground level with parents, caregivers, teachers, neighbors, and friends forming a network of support. So, how do we move forward? Normalize mental health check-ins for caregivers under stress. Parenting can be overwhelming, and unchecked pressure can lead to irreversible outcomes. Create environments where people can safely speak up. Whether it's a neighbor who notices something off or a healthcare worker raising a concern, reporting must be free of shame or fear. Remember that even attentive caregivers can reach a breaking point. Community support should focus on recognizing early signs of trouble, not just labeling bad parenting. Equip schools and social programs to spot hidden risks like behavioral changes or sibling and caregiver involvement. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. But intervention must be done before a child is at risk, not after the damage has been done. Let this case serve as a mirror, challenging us to rethink the systems we build and whether they are actually reaching those who need them most. Awareness is not about the past, it's about making change now. And the more people who understand that, the fewer names to remember rather than celebrate. Paris Talley is only 28 days old. She never reached her first milestones, but her story reminds us of what is at stake. These tragedies are not just about what went wrong, they are about what must be done right. Are we aware of the signs of a caregiver in crisis? Do we speak up if we sense something is wrong? Each of us can create safer spaces for children and families by caring, listening, and helping without judgment. Paris's story doesn't end in court, it ends with us. Share this message. Be vigilant and join in protecting children who can't protect themselves. Your light will save lives. Today's story is a reminder that safety and vigilance are essential in protecting ourselves and our loved ones. If you found this information valuable, please share this video to help raise awareness. Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue sharing important stories and lessons together. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.